Good morning, Algebra 1 students. This video is going to go over your 04.05 project assignment. The primary focus of this video is to go over the directions and clear up any questions or hesitations you might have prior to starting this project. We will also do a couple examples to ensure that we understand how to write exponential equations and then solve for a specific term. All right, let's get started. So the 0405 project assignment. This is the work independently one, so the one that a majority of you guys are going to be doing since it is difficult to collaborate right now. How much do you share on social media? Do you have accounts linked to your computer, phone, and tablet? The average teen spends around 5 hours per day online and checks his or her social media account about 10 times each day. When an image or post is shared publicly, some students are surprised at how quickly their information travels across the internet. The scary part is that nothing online is really private. All it takes is for one friend sharing your photo or updates with the public to create a very public viral trend. For this project, you will use what you have learned about exponential functions to study what happens if a social media post is shared publicly. There we have our setup. Now we're going to get into our directions and our data, so social sharing. 3 Algebra 1 students are comparing how fast their social media posts have spread. Their results are shown in the following table. As we analyze this table, we see that we have the 3 students, Amber, Ben, and Carter. We have a verbal description of their information. And then we have varying representations of their social media post. Beneath this data, there are a total of 7 questions. When you're finished with this video, beneath the YouTube link, there will be a Word document that you can download so you can type your answers directly into this document if you wish. When we look at our questions, because I personally like to read the questions first, so that way I have an idea of what I'm looking for. That is a strategy I prefer. So question number 1 wants us to write an exponential function to represent the spread of Ben's social media post. And as we look at number 2, it wants us to write an exponential function for Carter. So I know that one of my tasks is writing an exponential function, an exponential equation. Down on number 3, it says graph each function using at least 3 points for each curve. All graphs should be placed together on the same coordinate plane, so be sure to label each curve. You may graph your equation by hand on a piece of paper, or scan your work and you may use it using graphing technology, which would be Desmos. So the second task is after I have all 3 of my equations, I need to graph them all. Okay. And then 4 through 7 are all questions that have you analyzing the data from your equations and from your graph. All right, let's go back up and look at our information. We're going to focus on Amber because if we look at Amber, they've already given us the equation. So we can use Amber's data to help us be successful in recreating it for Ben and then for Carter. So Amber's verbal description. Amber shared her photo with 3 people. 3 people. They continued to share it, so the number of shares increases every day as shown by the following function. So f of x equals 3 times 4 raised to the power of x. Now, when I compare the verbal description to the equation, I see a common 3. All right, so 3 is her starting point. What I don't see in the verbal description is a 4. So in order for us to analyze what the 3 represents and what the 4 represents, we need to think back to our generic equation for an exponential function. If you recall, that is f of x is equal to a, which a is our initial value, our starting point, our y-intercept, times b, which is our common ratio, raised to the power of x. So if you're someone who is currently taking notes, which I would recommend, it would be helpful to note that A is our initial value. Let's change our color here so it makes sense. So A is our initial value, and then B is our common ratio. Now that we have that information, if we compare it to Amber's equation, we see that it matches because this first number 3 here was how many people Amber initially shared it with, 3 people. Therefore, 4 must be the number of shares that it increases by each day, which means it quadruples every single day. All right, this is the format of the equation that you guys need to write for both Ben and Carter in order to successfully answer question 1 and 2. What we're going to do is we're going to use a random example and write an equation. So that way, for those of you that are visual learners, you can still understand how to do this without me giving the example and the problem itself away. Oh, gotta go back to mouse, sorry about that. All right, there we go. So over here on the right, you will see an example that we're going to be working with. So Mr. M shared his post with 2 friends. Each of those friends shares their post with 5 more every day. So if we analyze our information, he shared his post with 2 friends and then 5 more every day. When we look at this, we need to analyze, all right, what is our A value, our initial point, and what is our B value, our common ratio? Well, he started sharing with 2 friends, so that would be our A. And then each of those friends shares with 5 more every day. That would be our B, our common ratio. So for our equation, we would have f of x is equal to 2 times b all raised to the power of x. Oh, wait, I just made a mistake. I forgot to insert my value for b. So make sure, because that is an easy thing to do, I just did it, that copying errors are real. So always take your time and verify your answers prior to submitting. Okay, now we have our equation. Now, before we graph this, I actually want to go ahead and focus on answering question number 4, okay? The reason for that is we can stick all on the whiteboard. So question number 4 wants us to use the functions for each student and predict how many shares they will have on day 3 and then on day 10, and justify your answers. So we'll do that with Mr. M. We'll find out how many shares he would have on day 3 and day 10. When I look at my equation, I need to determine whether my x value represents the number of days or my f of x, so my y, is the number of days. When we read our equation, we are finding that he shares, if we look at this, 5 more each day. 5 more each day. So that means x represents our number of days. Therefore, if I want to find how many shares there will be after a number of days, my f of x, therefore, has to be the number of shares. In the equation, it wants us, or in the equation, sorry, in the directions, it wants us to find out how many he had at day 3. So we will substitute, we will replace our x value for 3 days, and that'll help us solve and find our answer of how many shares. So instead of f of x, we will have f of 3 equals 2 times 5 raised to the power of 3. Now, when we go to simplify, we need to make sure we follow the order of operations. So a lot of times PEMDAS is what's used there. So P in PEMDAS stands for parentheses. Now what that really means is a grouping symbol. And when I look at this, I don't have any grouping symbols because the parentheses represent multiplication. So I can move down the list and go to E exponents. Do I have an exponent? Yes. So that's where I need to start. And please remember that 5 to the power of 3 as an exponent is 5 times itself 3 times. So 5 times 5 times 5, which would be 125. So we have 2 times 125. Now I have multiplication. So f of 3 is equal to 250 shares. So after 3 days, Mr. M's post would have been shared 250 times. That's a lot. All right, now we cannot forget that this was a 2-part question. It wanted us to find out how many it would be on day 3 and on day 10. So we'll repeat the same thing, only this time we'll be substituting 10 in for x instead of 3. So f of 10 is equal to 2 times 5 raised to the 10th power. Once again, when I go to simplify, I need to follow order of operations. I don't have any parentheses that are grouping symbols. So what comes next is the exponent. So 5 to the 10th power. So that means 5 times itself 10 times. We're going to get a doozy of a number here. We get the number 9,765,625. So we have 2 times 9,765,625. Then when we multiply that by 2, f of 10 is equal to 19,531,000. I apologize for my bad writing. 250 shares. Ooh. That grew exponentially. That was an insane jump from 3 days at 250 shares all the way to 10 days, we're over 19 million. That is exactly why whenever things are shared exponentially, whether it be computer viruses, interest rates, social media posts, they can either grow or decay very, very quickly. All right, now that we have answered that part of the question, I am going to go back, and our last part of today will be showing how to graph on Desmos. Once you have all of your information graphed on question number 3, your data here for day 3 and day 10 on number 4, you will then be able to answer 5, 6, and 7, which have you comparing the data, analyzing the data, answering questions about who travels fastest, how would things change if you shifted the starting point, okay? So on Desmos, oh, sorry about that. All right. Oh, I guess I need to clear my screen here, don't I? All right, on Desmos, when you go to that website, remember right here is how it is spelled. It's also in the directions. If we open this up, we have our keyboard function, which gives us some more options. So we're going to type in our equation, and we're going to do the one from Mr. M. So that was f of x is equal to 2 times 5. And then we have to make sure that our x is entered as an exponent. Otherwise, we will have a linear equation, so a straight line, which is not correct. If we look at our little keyboard right down here, we see a squared. Well, it's not squared. I want an exponent that's a variable. So if we look over here, a to the b, that lets you make the exponent any value. So if I select that, see how my cursor kind of moved up? That puts me in exponent mode. I can enter my X. Voila, we have our graph. Now, when you guys do your project, you have a total of 3 functions to graph: Amber, Ben, and Carter. So you can either select down below to enter the second one, or you can always hit the return space. Please make sure that you enter the values for all 3 on the same graph. When it comes to submitting your graph, you have 2 options. You can either take a screenshot and insert it into the Word document or upload it separately. Or I've even seen some students that take the direct link from Desmos and paste that into the Word document. And then whether it's Mr. M, Mr. Lasanti, or myself, we can just click on it, see your graph, and grade it. All right, I hope that this has helped answer some of your guys' questions, maybe alleviate some of the barriers that have kept you guys from completing the 4.05 assignment. As always, please remember that all 3 of us are here for you. We are more than willing to further clarify or help explain the math. So just reach out to us, whether it be email, Google Voice. Let us know that you need something. Let us know that you have questions, and we're more than happy to help you out. All right, have a good rest of your Monday, guys, and we will talk to you later. Bye.